On the Jacob Viewer Show, I'm so happy to have on Angela Ahrendts, who is from our hometown. You went to New Palestine High School a little while back. How's your day going?
Doing really well in rainy California.
Oh, it's raining there. It's actually sunny in Indiana, so little shock. Well, my first question isn't so much a question, but you of course grew up in our town. It was a lot smaller at the time. It's still pretty small, but it was like 100 kids a grade probably back then. What was it like being from such a small town, walking in our same shoes that students walk in today, being part of a small town like that where sports is everything? How did you kind of find your love for business and, end up going to school for that? You were a cheerleader in high school. How did you kind of then transition going to Ball State and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back up, like you said, how was it growing up in a small town? And I think that, I think when you're young and growing up, you don't know any different, right? It's no different if you're a kid in a community in Africa or China. I mean, that is your world. That community is your world. And I think what you and I grew, yes, it was a small town. I grew up in a small neighborhood, a mile or two outside of town. And so that was the only world I knew. That was my community, family, neighbors, you know, playing in the tree house, playing baseball down on the church lot, walking to church every morning or every weekend. And it was, and I think that it's an incredible foundation because we felt safe. We felt loved. We felt that human connection, and so it was an incredible feeling. And I think when you're fortunate enough to have that, then that opens up your mind and you can dream and you can think creatively and you can and so I was a dreamer. I'd lay in my bedroom and look out the window and just dream of, and it was funny because I'd watch the men drive home from work, and a lot of them worked in the car factories or um, and I just always told myself, I don't want it to be work. I want to do what I love. And I would lay there and say, what do you love? What do you? And again, I'm young, I'm a teenager, and I was sewing, and this was the 60s, and we were putting patchwork in our bell-bottom pants, and I got a lot of hand-me-downs, and I was cutting those up and making those look cool. And so it was a very humble upbringing, but I with laying there and dreaming because of this safe foundation I had, I discovered that I loved fashion and I loved, making things. And then I'd start to buy fashion magazines and look at those. And, we didn't have phones or the internet, and none of that was around at all. You had to, wait once a month for a fashion magazine to come out. And so I kept, and then it was like, and then that didn't feel like work. So I said, well, what if I get myself into that area somehow? And then as you further your education and you're starting to look at colleges and things, I had have two older sisters, and one had gone to Butler and one had gone to Ball State. And I went up to visit my sister at Ball State, and I walked into one of the buildings, and there was literally a giant sign talking about the upcoming merchandising and marketing classes. And as I read through it, it just felt like me. It was just all of my dreams, and I didn't know merchandising or marketing. I didn't know, but that sign sounded like exactly the door I wanted to go through. So I went home, signed up to go to Ball State, and studied merchandising and marketing.
Interesting. And of course, from there after that, you kind of worked in New York City. But real quick, just taking a little step back, do you have a favorite memory while you were at New Palestine High School? You were a cheerleader, of course. Do you have a favorite memory like that?
Oh, I mean, gosh, how do you have one? I mean, 4 rich years of, and I did sports. I played tennis and did gymnastics and ran track. I mean, back then we could, you could be in sports 24/7. So a lot of amazing sports memories and yeah, a lot of great cheerleading memories. I mean, I would probably be remiss if it wasn't my favorite. It was a high school basketball tournament in probably December of 1977. Now you can know how old I am. And it was a basketball tournament about a 2 or 3 hour drive away, and it was a sleepover one because it was over a weekend right before Christmas. And I got sat at dinner at a very long table right across from a guy by the name of Greg Couch. And he was the forward on the basketball team, and our eyes kind of met, and we've been together ever since. So that's absolutely got to be my finest memory from high school.
Wow, interesting. And I knew about that too, a new Palestine couple as well. And then so after Ball State, you ended up working in the business world for quite a while, becoming worked at Liz Carbone in New York, some other stops like that, later Burberry, then the senior vice president of Reach Out Apple. What kind of advice would you have? You've been in so many different corporate structures. What advice would you have for somebody who's 18 years old? There's quite a bit of kids at our school going to Ball State, IU. I'm going to Purdue Boiler Up, UND, you name it, IUPUI, Butler. What advice would you have for somebody who's studying business like that, or just
and,
going on
and
their
I,
next phase of life, coming from a small
yeah,
town out?
yeah. But what I would say is, I don't think business is any different than the medical field, or the arts. And I used to say, when I was at Burberry, yes, it was business, but it was the business of fashion. When I was at Apple, it was business, but it was in the business of technology. And so to me, business is so broad, and encompasses so much. And so I think that it's so important as you enter college to start really doing a lot of self discovery. Who are you? What do you love every morning? What do you hate that you don't want to do? Do you hate numbers? Do you hate blood? Do you hate, it's like, so because it's not just business. And in business, it's so broad. There's the creative side of business, the marketing side of business, the financial side of business, the technology side of business, the merchandising side of business. There's so many departments, in a company that, and so my thing is discover who your passion. What do you love? What do you hate? How left brain analytical are you? Are you very set in your ways? Are you very operational? Would you be better in supply chain or logistics, or are you a creative thinker, a dreamer, and you're connecting dots and looking out 2 or 3 years? Then maybe you'd be better over here in marketing or in design and so I think I would urge you not to think about business. I would urge you to think about
Your passion.
you, because we're all wired differently. I'm a 50-50. I am half right brain and half left brain. And so, there's enough of these fun tests and things you can do online, but who are you? And what do you naturally love and lean into? And then as you look at the curriculums in college, if you feel like you are more creative and strategic and et cetera, then get yourself into those types of roles. Play around with some marketing, play around with. But if you say, oh, no, 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 that's not me at all. I love numbers and I'm a very operational, organized, more left brain, more linear, then get yourself over into that type of curriculum. And it's so important because, if you just want to find out who you are, and you want to stay in your lane. It's funny. It's been a number of years ago now, but on LinkedIn, I did a little letter to my daughters, and it was for Mother-Daughter Day or something. And I did that because they were both in high school getting ready to go to college. And it was my advice to them in that note. And then recently, SAP, which is a huge technology company, came out with a series. And would you do a video to your younger self, kind of guiding, et cetera? So it's on YouTube. It's if you type my name and SAP. And so it's all along these lines. It's just, my dad used to always say, to thyself be true. But right now, before you start going down a path, pause and just figure out who you are and what you want, and try and look out 5 years and where do you want to be? Because if you start down one, and you can always change, but why would you want to waste a couple of years in the medical field if that's not your passion, or a couple of years in finance if that's not your passion?
For sure, really good advice there. So passion, like you said there. And then a couple other questions I just have is what would you say has been your favorite memory working in the kind of corporate world. I think if I recall, and I had asked you the one question in the auditorium that day, I think you might have said it was travel or something like that. Getting to do that was really exciting. Is that still one of them? Do you still travel quite a bit, doing different things like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think when you reach a certain level, right, that yes, the travel has been absolutely incredible. When I was younger, I used to say that I wanted to get in a position where I could travel the world on someone else's money. But that's been a wonderful benefit. But I would tell you even more than that. It's the people you meet on your journey. Life is a journey, life is an adventure. And I have been so incredibly blessed to meet some of the most amazing people in business, in politics, in, no matter where you go. And so I feel like I have such a fun network now all over the world that, you fly into a city and you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with different people that you've met along your life journey. So the people are, the people where you grew up in your community, the people you meet in your communities along the way. And don't ever forget where you came from, because that's your foundation. But then keep adding there's a lot of like-minded people just like you that share your values, and and they all add to you and your who you are and who you're becoming. And I talk a lot about instincts, using your instincts, but you've got to feed those instincts by being around interesting people and doing interesting things. No different than we're feeding AI with all the large language models, right? So you got to feed yourself constantly. And the more you feed yourself and surround yourself with people smarter than you and so much more diverse in their backgrounds than you, the better that you are, the better your instincts will become, because you're feeding, this incredible knowledge into yourself constantly. So I think people would have to be number one. And of course, travel is a wonderful, wonderful benefit when you reach a certain level and you're with a global business.
For sure, for sure. And then just kind of one last thing, is, you mentioned, of course, the college advice and a little bit broader business about how, there's so many different things if you're getting a business degree. What would you say is something to kind of close with? If you were a senior in high school graduating in 2 weeks, what would you be saying? What would have you done maybe differently, if you don't mind me asking? Just because I think it's always interesting to ask people, to look back 30, 40 years, what they would have done differently, or would you not have done anything differently?
Mm-hmm. So that's a two-part question. One is the advice, and two, what I would do differently. So I'm going to answer the first one first. So I would do absolutely, positively nothing any different. I graduated. From high school, I went to college. I got out in 3 years. I worked through the summers. I worked a full-time job. I played tennis in college, and I went to college to get out. So I doubled up and took as many courses as I could, and got out and got done in 3 years, and packed my bag and moved to New York, because I was going to live the dream in the fashion world. So that was
Shoot for
that
the
was
stars right there.
that was my dream. That was my so I again, and I think so. So I wouldn't do anything different. But along those lines, my advice is I wouldn't do anything different, because I looked out 5 years and I had a dream. And with that dream, I had a pathway. And it's funny, because when I turned 50, about over 10 years ago, I went back to Ball State and gave the commencement speech. And it shares that journey from Ball State to New York to and I was doing it then for 14,000 students and my own kids now sitting in the audience. So my advice is, you have to pause. Nobody's going to take care of your career but you. Nobody's saying, Johnny, look over here, you should do this, or Sally, come over here. You have to, you and whatever higher force you believe in. I have tremendous faith, and I always have had. And I've always been of the school, use me, lead me, guide me. And so, but I also think that, you have to find and discover yourself, and you have to look out 5 years for yourself. You may not want to work in a big corporation. There are more entrepreneurs being made today than at any other time in history. You may want to start your own business. You may want to work for a small business, which I would have never ended up at Apple had I not started out in very small businesses, learning a tremendous amount about all areas. The smaller the business, the broader the role. the bigger the business, the narrower the role. And it's really, really important, I think, as you're starting out, starting to work, et cetera. So, but most importantly, where do you want to go? Have a roadmap in your mind, and it may not be perfect, but have a dream for yourself, whatever it is. And my dream was to be in fashion because I knew at a young age I'd never feel like that was work. That would always be something I loved and I would look forward to. And so then that helped. That was my lens that I saw everything through. And it was really easy to say no if somebody offered me a job over here. No, that's not a part of my dream. That is not a part of my passion. So very easy to say no to things then as people are throwing them your way. So I think, kind of like my dad said, to thyself be true.
For sure. And thank you so much again for coming on the Jacob Beer Show. That's some really good advice right there. Like you said, the dream, the passion, and what do you see yourself, like you said, being able to do to where it's not considered work. I think that's such a very big element. So I appreciate you so much for coming on the Jacob Beer Show and sharing that advice today with us. So thank you so much.
Well, best of luck to all of you graduating. Just life's an adventure. Enjoy it.
Thank you.